I wish you would have folded. I was trying to get you to fold. That's a really bad turn card. We've been playing for about 25 minutes. We're up a little bit. There's a $7 straddle. A player to my right limps in. I make it 35. We get a call from the small blind, and the straddler falls out along with the big blind. And when it comes back around to the limper to my right, he also decides not to play. So we're going to end up going heads up with this small blind player for $87. Flop comes out King 9 deuce with 2 clubs. And a pretty good flop for my hand. When he checks to me, I go ahead and bet for $35. He doesn't think too long before putting in the call. Now my opponent could have a king in this spot, or some sort of medium-sized pocket pair. He also could have like an ace-high hand. Turn card comes as a 9 of diamonds, which is good and bad. If he has a 9, he definitely owns me now, but it definitely reduces all the possibilities. He either is going to call me with a king, a 9, or basically nothing. So I go ahead and continue for $90, hoping he doesn't have either one of a king or a 9, and he thinks for a while and then lets it go. So we get this one through with a little aggression. I'm in the hijack. There's a player who limps in front of me, and I got 210, so I decided to raise it up to $20. End up getting 3 callers for the $20. So we're going to head off to this flop with $83 in the center, hoping to get a good flop, and it comes ace 8 deuce rainbow. So not a very good flop for 10s, but the first 2 players check, and they seem very weak, so I decided to go ahead and c-bet this. Normally with three or more players in there, I'll probably wave the white flag, but I just had to get by the player on the button, and I did. Again, the player to my right limps in. I decided to raise to 15 with king 10 suited from the +1 position. It's a little bit loose in my book, and we end up getting several callers. So we're going to go 4 ways to the flop with $64 in the center. Flop comes out 7-5-4 with 2 spades. So a decent flop for my specific hand, but not really great for my range. There's a lot of my callers are going to have those kind of cards. So I decided to check it. Ends up getting bet by the player in the low jack for $25. Naturally, I'm going to call with a 2 overs and a flush draw. The player behind me also puts in the call. So we're getting a pretty decent price to draw at a flush. Turn card comes as a queen of hearts. Does nothing for me. I decide to check again. It gets checked again to the low jack player, who this time bets $45. I still think I have a decent price to draw to this, so I put in the call. The other player folds out, looking for a spade on the river, and we get the 4 diamonds. Yeah, that's no good for our flush draw. He bets small, this time $55, just trying to milk me. I think he has a pretty good hand. It would have been nice to catch a spade. There's a $7 straddle. I'm in the big blind, and we had 4 limpers for the $7. I looked down at 2 aces and raised to 55. I meant to go 65, but I didn't grab enough chips, and I kind of screwed that up. Hoping it doesn't hurt, but it looks like it's going to, because everyone seems to be interested in playing this hand for $55. I end up getting 4 callers for the $55, and not ideal when you have 2 aces and you have 4 opponents to fight against. There's a couple that have a deep stack, and then there's like 2 that have a shorter stack. So once the small blind puts in the call, we're going to go to this flop with $283 in it. It's kind of bloated, but oh well. Flop comes 9-9-6 with 2 diamonds. I do have the ace of diamonds, so that's a benefit. And I was thinking about how much to bet when the player to my right in the small blind jams all in. He has $142, and I'm trying to think whether I should play this fast and raise or whether I should just call and see if I can get a side pot going. Because this player either has a 9 or a flush draw, so I'm not really too concerned about someone drawing, and I'm not really too concerned whether my aces are the best. I was thinking maybe I can just get a side pot going because I'm either way ahead of him with his flush draw or way behind him because he has a 9. Anyway, I make the call. I'm not in love with my play, but this is what I did. The player to my left puts in the call for the 142 also. Everyone else ended up folding out. So we have $709 in the main pot, and we'll be betting on a dry side pot if we decide to bet. See a turn card, which is a king of hearts. Now there's 2 possible flush draws out there. He has about 200 and change left, so I decided just to go ahead and fire away. Again, not in love with this play. I probably should have isolated the all-in player on the flop. Player thinks for a while, lets it go. So I take my chip back. We are just up against the all-in player. River card comes as a 7 of clubs, and he just mucks his hand, which was a little bit surprising. I figured I would at least have to show my cards to end up winning this one, but since he mucked it, I'll just take this down and keep it a secret. Until now. There is a straddle. Player opens for $20. I'm on the button with 2 queens. I decide to make it 70, trying to isolate this player. End up getting called by the straddler and the player who opened for 20. The straddler is a player who is can get very sticky and is not afraid of putting money into the pot. The caller who opened for 20 is a solid reg. Flop comes out 10-7-5 rainbow. Really good flop for 2 queens. Not too much to worry about unless somebody hit a set with maybe pocket 10s, pocket 7s. The straddler now leads out and he bets $120. So yeah, he could have pocket 10s here. He can have pocket 7s. But he could also be doing this with a draw of some sort. So after thinking a little bit, I decided to put in the call and play the turn. Turn card comes as a 3 of clubs. Shouldn't really complete anything. I doubt he has 6-4, but it does put up a flush draw. And when he checks to me, I just decided I'm just going to go ahead and fire all in. He could have a 10 with a club draw. He could have ace 10, maybe even pocket jacks, 8-9 suited. Anyway, there's a lot of possibilities that he would call off with. He thought for probably about 2 minutes before finally deciding to fold ace king. So if he had anything else a little bit stronger, I think he would have came. I'm in the hijack with ace queen offsuit. Player to our right limps in for $3. I make it 20. End up getting a bunch of callers, the player in the cutoff, the button, and one of the blinds. And of course, the player who limped in. They all come along. So we have $101 in this plot. That comes queen high with a 10 and a 5. Pretty good flop. It's checked over to me. I'm definitely going to c-bet. I go a little bit on the higher side just because there's a lot of possible draws with hands like Jack 9, King Jack. You know the drill. End up getting folds from everyone, and I was very happy to take down this small pot and call it a day. Interesting fact about this day's session, I did not have to show my cards all day long. I don't know if I've ever done that before. I've been playing for about 45 minutes, haven't had much to play. Finally pick up ace king. There was a player who had a straddle for 6. I make it 25. Everybody folds, and he decides to put in the call for the extra money. And we're going to go heads up to the flop with 54 in. Flop comes out king jack 6 with 2 clubs. He checks over to me. I check it back right away. Being a little bit deceptive here. Turn cards of 4 diamonds. He checks again. I'm going to go for some value. My hand either looks like a monster or like I have basically nothing. Maybe I picked up a flush draw and is trying to get him to fold something. Anyway, he makes the call for the 25, and we see the river card of a 2 of hearts. A complete blank. All the draws miss. He checks again. I decided to bet $65. Now, in my opponent's mind, he thinks that I probably have either a very big hand, maybe a hand as good as pocket kings, I think he mentioned, or I have nothing like ace high. So this is one of the advantages of checking back a top pair type of hand, especially when you play heads up and you're in position. You can really get people to maybe put in a loose call here and there. And he does decide to put in a loose call. I show my ace king, he mucks his hand, and we win our first pot of the day. There's a $7 straddle, player limps in for 7, next player makes it 35. It's folded to the button who makes it 75. Comes back around to me in the big blind, and I find myself with 2 aces. I decide to make it $200. None of the stacks are fairly deep, so I probably could get away with maybe slow playing this a little bit more. But I figured that the player who made it 75 was going to go with their hand, and they have about $270. So I figured they would just jam, but they end up making the call. So we're going to go heads up to this flop, and yeah, this is going to be easy. I'm planning on betting $70 on any flop. Flop comes out 10 high. I put in the $70, which covers him. He says, well, I can't fold now, so he makes the call. So we're going to end up seeing this run out, and there's $586 in the pot. It comes with a 8 and a 10. I show my aces. He flashed that he had ace king. And yeah, so far everything's going according to plan. No big hiccups so far. Well, it's time for another bomb pot. I look down at a 10 of hearts and then peek back at a 8 of hearts. Not a bad starting hand for a bomb pot. You know, maybe I can flop a straight, a flush, straight flush. Flop comes jack high and all hearts. So we flop a flush, and we got 7 opponents on this particular hand. Player leads out small for $20. Now, sometimes I'll be a little bit more aggressive with bomb pots, but I'm out of position and I had like 5 other players to the left act behind me. So I just decided to call. Yeah, it's a little passive, but I'm either way ahead or way behind. So I figure a call would be safe. We get one other caller and we get to see a turn card, which is a 9 of diamonds. Now the initial better checks. I'm going to go ahead and check here because I figure the player behind has at least a jack. And sure enough, he decides to put in a bet. It was rather a small bet. So this really makes me think it's like a one pair type of hand trying to figure out where they're at. The other player puts in the call for the $35. Now it's back to me. I'm going to go for a little check raise action here, trying to get some value from someone with a ace high or king high flush draw. Also from someone that has top pair. So I make it 135. Player who was the better on this round, he ends up deciding to fold his hand, which I don't blame him. If he has a one pair type of hand, he's very likely drawing dead, which I'm pretty sure he was. And the other player makes a quick call. It makes me think he has like a big flush draw, like an ace of hearts or a king of hearts. So we go see a river card with 445 in, and it comes ace of spades. That's perfect. It gives that person with an ace high flush draw a top pair. Maybe they'll call a small bet, but instead they just end up shipping it for a little over $200. Naturally, I think that if someone had a flush bigger than mine, they would have raised on the turn. So I make a quick call, and I was shown ace 5 offsuit with the ace of hearts. So my flush ends up winning this one. I got a little more action than I really deserved. So I was very happy to get all the chips, and things are going perfectly so far. This was the very next hand. I was still stacking my chips and taking notes from the previous hand, and there was 2 big blinds. So I didn't look at my cards. I said I call. The other big blind decide to raise to 30. Player who limped in originally now goes all in for $92. And I realize I have ace king suited, and I think the player to my left has a very strong hand. Now I can't go into all the details of why I think this player has a really strong hand, but in my mind they have hands like ace king, pocket aces, kings, queens, jacks, maybe tens. And since I have ace king, I figure the likelihood of them having aces or kings is much smaller, so I'm thinking more like queens, jacks, and tens. And if I put in a call, they're definitely going to put in a raise, or at least they should. So I figured calling was the worst possible option. And it's between raising big, or folding even. I did consider folding because I thought he had a very strong range. But he was also up on the day, and he was doing really well. And I thought he might want to protect that. And I have a very tight image at the time, and he has a little bit of fear from my action. So I think I picked the wrong choice, but it's the choice I took. And I was trying to get folds from jacks, tens, and some queens, and I decided just to shove all in. Now, naturally, my hand looks like ace king, by that big overjam. I think a bet of 225 looks as strong or maybe even stronger than that, and that he might end up folding it. I was hoping that he would fold all his jacks and tens and maybe some of his queens, and I was going to gamble with the rest of it. He ends up making a call, and when he does, I told him, man, I was really trying to get you to fold because I know you have a hand and I don't like mine. And he says, well, if you don't, why'd you put all that money in there if you don't like your hand? And I told him I was trying to get you to fold, and that's a true story. So we're going to end up going to a flop. There's 285 in the middle, and we have a side pot of a little over $1,000. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, this is a punt in the making because I'm trying to get someone to fold a very strong hand. Flop comes king high, turn, river, basically blanks. I show my ace king, and he did have pocket queens. So I don't like the way I played it. I got max value, but it really should never have happened. I think the best play would probably be just to raise to a standard size of like 225. And if he puts me all in, then I'll just have to call off. Well, we got a multi-way limp pot, and I got 5-4 offsuit in the big blind. Definitely nothing I'm going to be doing here. Well, we get to see a flop, and it comes king high, and we make a pair. So that's not bad. First person checks, I check, and it gets checked all the way around. Oh, not bad. Let's see if we can catch a 4 and maybe win a small pot. Turn card comes is a 5. So now there's a possible flush draw. I do have 2 pair. The player in the small blind leads out for $15. I could raise here, but really I'm being very passive in this hand. There's just have no clue where anyone's at. I put in a call. Another player puts in a call. And now the player in the hijack puts in a very small raise to $35. So it's only $20 more. I figured he has something like ace 3, and I'm trying to decide whether it's worth $20 to bust him. He does have about $400 or $500 left in his stack, so I put it in the call. River card comes as an ace. We miss. I figured if he had ace 3, he will continue to bet. I check it to him. He starts, putting a wager together. And I told him, don't get greedy, and he put out a bet of $65. And I said, oh, you got too greedy. And I show him the 2 pair as I fold. He did flash a 3. There's a $6 straddle on this hand and a couple limpers. I decided to limp along from the small blind with pocket 9s. Sometimes I'll be aggressive with it. This time I decided just to call, hoping to flop a big hand and maybe win a big pot. Flop comes out 10-9-3 with 2 hearts. Pretty good flop for pocket 9s. There are straights and flush draws out there. I decided to go for the old check raise routine. I check it. It gets checked all the way around to the player on the button, who puts in a bet for $20. I go ahead and check raise to 55, trying to make sure anyone who wants to draw is going to have to pay for it. The player on my direct left thinks for a while, and then he decides to put in the call. Now, I played a lot of poker with him, and he is a watcher of the vlog. And I'm pretty sure that he has a flush draw, and it's not a small flush draw. It's probably either a straight flush draw or the nut flush draw. The other player on the button ends up folding out, and we're going to go see a turn card heads up with 166 in the pot. And the turn card is the worst card in the world. It's the Jack of Hearts. So I check it immediately. He fires for 115, and This is a flush all day long and twice on Sunday. And it might even be a straight flush. If it was a straight flush, he might use a smaller sizing, but he kind of knows where I'm at. He knows I have at least 2 pair, and he's not going to let me get there cheaply. I'm not getting the right price to draw for it. He only has about $100 behind, and I don't know whether he'll pay me off if I make a full house. So yeah, it sucks, but I'm just going to let this one go. I'm not getting the right price to draw to it, and I'm like 100% sure he has a flush. He did show that he had the ace-6 of hearts and that it was a good laydown. Well, after that pocket nines hand, I played another round or two before leaving. Didn't do anything else for the rest of the day. Ended up booking a nice win that first day of 810, and second day I did a little better, winning 1350. Of course, the majority of that came on the pocket queens hand where I had ace-king suited, and we basically flipped for $1,200. Yeah, it could have gone either way. I'm not really happy the way I played that hand. I think that I should have probably just raised a normal amount. Anyway, I shoved, he called, he made a good call, he was ahead, he was the favorite in the hand, and I got lucky. That's why that little green check mark is over in front of this video where it says be luckier than my opponent. So today I was luckier than my opponent, and I owe this win to that. Anyway, I really do appreciate you guys watching the video. It really helps out the channel when you hit that like and subscribe button and comment below. If you want to share it with anyone, you have my permission. Anyway, until next time, good luck at the tables, and we'll see you back here soon.